poppin', B? Purpok here, and welcome back to another episode of Race the Ramen, the show where I attempt to review something unscripted in the amount of time it takes to boil an instant ramen. And today we'll be taking a look at Titane, showing now in select theaters. Alright, we're going to start the timer right now. Okay, so, Titane. This is the newest movie from director Julia Ducournau, hope I got that right, whose previous film was her directorial debut, Raw. And if you know anything about that movie, then you might understandably be a little bit worried about what this one's about. She has a sort of reputation, even just with these two films, of being a sort of provocateur, almost like an artistic shock jockey. Her films have a lot to say, but they're not exactly standard, normal movies that are easy to swallow. And Titane is no exception. I could just explain the basic premise to you and you probably just go, nope. But stick with me on this, please. Because Titane is one of the best movies I've seen all year. I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like it. Now, seriously, bear with me on this, okay? I'm gonna lose a lot of you, but here we go. Titane, basic plot I can get into without spoiling very much, is that a young woman has a car accident as a child and ends up with a titanium plate in her head. This causes her to kind of have a morphed mental state growing up, has some neurological effects on her, and she basically ends up sexually attracted to cars. And, big plot point that everyone loves to talk about when discussing this movie, she fucks a car. She has sex with a car and gets pregnant with a car baby. Now, if most of you have left by now, I'm not surprised. But again, stick with me on this. I was not sold on the premise going in. The only reason I really went to see this is because critics have been raving about it. And a lot of people I respect, and whose opinions I respect, have been saying that. So I went into it trying to withhold expectations, and I kind of got something amazing. It's, again, I'm trying not to spoil a lot because it's a very surprising plot-driven movie, and I don't think I could do it justice by just telling you what happens. It's just got everything you'd want from a good movie. You understand what's going on all the time, and even then, even though you understand the basics of everything, there's so much going on under the surface. It's bursting with themes of identity, gender fluidity, love, platonic and romantic, sexuality. It's erotic, it's violent, it's weird and disturbing. There are moments where I was literally just cringing behind my hand, gritting my teeth, watching uncomfortable violence happen, or worried where something would go. Everyone's been calling this the most shocking film of the year. Some reviews have been touting that, and people have been tossing it around. But even if that is true, I don't think this is a gratuitous, thoughtless film. It is crafted with immaculate purpose and care, and it is excellent. Titane is a masterpiece. Hopefully that gave you a decent impression of what I think of the film. And again, I know I tend to go really all over the place with movies that I like, but this is really an experience that is better appreciated going in knowing as little as possible. It's probably going to shock you, and I understand if the premise of a lady being pregnant with a car baby is too silly or weird, or you just don't want to watch an erotic thriller body horror thing. I get it. But I wasn't sold on it. I went in, and then I've got what may be a new favorite for me. This film is fantastic. Titane gets a 10 out of 10. It's not perfect. I'll admit I didn't understand everything going through the first time. I'm sure there's stuff I missed. But I was just enraptured and having a good time the whole time, even when it was pushing me to my emotional limits at times for what I was willing to look at. And honestly, I think this kind of thing should be celebrated and enjoyed. Go out and give it a try. Even if you don't think you're going to like it, I think you might find something refreshing and new, if nothing else. Even if it's not necessarily to your tastes. I'm over-explaining things, which is what I said I wouldn't do. But yeah, Titane is fantastic. Go see it in theaters. You can come complain to me if you want, or tell me it was great. I don't care. Tell me I suck. Whatever. I like the movie where the lady fucks a car. It's emotionally resonant and really smart and good. There, I said it.
Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
And today we'll be taking a look at Cleaners, streaming now on Spamflix. Alright, we're going to start the timer right now. Okay, so, Cleaners. Some of you are probably wondering, what is this movie? I've never heard of it. Well, welcome to Race the Ramen. But anyway, Cleaners is this movie that I heard about a while back as one that was making the rounds at some festivals this year that was pretty good, but there was nowhere to find it. Till eventually, it popped up on Spamflix. I'll talk about that in a minute. But yeah, this is an interesting little movie. It is a high school coming-of-age anthology comedy sort of movie. Kind of like events transpiring before, during, and after a high school basketball game, which I also talked about. Slightly different structure. It's a story of a bunch of different teenagers who all attend the same Catholic school in the Philippines, and they all have assumptions about themselves, or like presumptions about what it means to be clean or pure or stuff like that. That's sort of the connecting theme between them. And then you see these different plots play out in isolation until they sort of come together at the end. And it's a really interesting movie from a visual perspective. It has what I'd almost argue is like an animation style for its presentation. I'd almost argue it's not a normal live-action movie, because what they did is they filmed the entire movie regular style. Then they took several frames out of every second of film, ran them through a photocopier, and then highlighted different segments with highlighter pens to make it kind of scratchy and make the colors really pop. This gives the whole thing a sort of faded photograph, looking back on memories sort of vibe, which I think it's going for. It's a movie about being a young person, a teenager, and finding yourself. People always like expecting different things from you and who you should be and what you will do. And I feel like certain aspects of the story are kind of tied up in perhaps details of like Filipino culture of the Philippines that I don't really understand. I had to do a little bit of research to make sure that I fully grasp what was happening. But for the most part, these are pretty universal themes they're dealing with, and I didn't feel too alienated by the culture gap. What I did feel alienated by, however, were the occasional moments of gross-out comedy in this movie. There's really only like 2 or 3 that really spring to mind for me, but they're kind of major plot points and really kind of unpleasant. I won't go into too much detail, but there's one part where I just kind of had to look away because I was not going to enjoy what was happening. Like, those moments are kind of tough to get through, and it makes recommending this to a general audience difficult to do. But it's a surprisingly mature, interesting, and uniquely presented movie. I'm glad I got the chance to see it. I don't think it's like one of the best of the year necessarily. People were kind of going nuts about it. I like it plenty though, and I think it's worth a watch. You should try Cleaners out. It's pretty good. Yeah. That yeah really added something at the end, didn't it? Hopefully that gave you a decent impression of what I think of the movie. I was really not sure what to expect. I just kind of really wanted to see it. So I just pursued to the end, like, whatever this movie is, I gotta know, because it's got this air of mystery around it. And now it's more readily available, and yeah, it's decent. Maybe you'll love it more than I did. The presentation is pretty cool and special, and I don't know, I found one of the segments in particular of this anthology to be, like, really gripping, like, excellent stuff. The rest of it, pretty good or okay, with some not great moments. Overall, I'd say it averages out to a pretty solid film, but could have been something more. I give Cleaners a solid 7 out of 10, which I'm pretty sure I also gave to Events Transpiring, etc., etc. I like them both about the same for different reasons. They're kind of similar in that they're, like, you know, situational-based comedies about teenagers. I guess the Events Transpiring is more middle school, but whatever. I think that it stands as on its own, as a solid movie, and that you should check it out. Maybe you're not going to like the gross out stuff, maybe it'll even improve it for you. I don't know. But if you want something different from just a normal rom-com or teen movie, one that's a little more, like, open and honest about the shitty stuff about being young and the cringe stuff that happens when you're young, I think it fills that niche nicely. Before I forget, I should probably talk about how I ended up seeing this movie because it's kind of a funny story. But it's a little too much to just recap right here, so here's a dramatic reenactment of what took place. Okay, so basically what happened was I was looking for a way to watch Cleaners, and Letterboxd had it at number 1, and their Twitter was talking about it, and someone asked, any clue how you might watch Cleaners? And they replied saying that there aren't really a lot of ways to do it at the moment, and the director is looking for distribution. So, kind of as a joke, I tagged Spamflix on Twitter, because it just kind of seemed up their alley and no one had taken it yet. They like weird cult movie stuff, so I was like, hey, try this. I was like, cough, cough. And then, like, a couple weeks later, they coughed back. So yeah, that's pretty cool. That happened.